Hello and welcome to this month's Stampin' Society. I am Charlotte Mallet and I am excited to show you how we created this card. We are showing you fall and spring cards. I am using the gorgeous leaves stamp set and intricate leaf dies to create my cards. These are available in the 2021 holiday or June to January mini catalog. The card I'm going to share is this fun one right here. This card has a really interesting kapow background, but it's pretty simple to make. Step-by-step written instructions on how to create this card are on my blog, paintedorangeshop. All right, let's get started on how we made this card. This card is pretty simple. Card base, pattern paper, watercolor paper, a little technique here. This card makes a great visual statement, but it is relatively quick to put together. Let's show you how we do it. You need a sheet of 4 1/4 by 11. We're going to score that and fold it in half. We'll score that at 5 1/2 here. Then you're going to take a sheet from this pattern party, this designer series paper. We're going to take the black side and we're going to cut that. We're going to cut it to 4 by 5 1/4, and we're going to mount that onto the card front here. Just center it and mount it so that you have a little halo of white all the way around. That is your card base. I'll set that to the side. And now we're going to create this watercolor textured background. You're going to want a piece of fluid 100 watercolor paper or any watercolor paper that you have. We've got 2 here. We're going to do 2 at a time just to make sure that we get the effect that we want. You're going to want a watercolor brush or a water painter with some water. You're going to need 2 colors of ink here, soft succulent and evening evergreen. And we are playing with gorgeous leaves. So we're going to take this piece first. And we're going to mount that onto our block. Just get it ready to go. And we'll take this smaller piece here, mount that, get that ready to go. We're going to start with the softest color first, the lightest color first. Now, first, we're going to completely wet our background. So we'll use our water painter, squeeze to get some water, just like so that it's wet. We'll do both. I'm not sure if you can see that, but that's pretty wet. Then we are going to stamp with this big texture once, twice. And the ink is going to start to bleed. You see how that's happening and really bleeding into that water. Let's do it again over here. 1, and we'll ink it up again. 2. See how that's bleeding, and as it sits, it bleeds even more. Cool, right? Then we're going to take the darker ink. We're going to let that dry a little bit. And then we're going to take this image with the darker ink, and we're going to stamp it a couple times on top. So let's see. Now, the wetter your paper is, the more it will bleed. We do want this to bleed a fair amount, but this paper is still pretty wet. Let's see, that's why we've got 2 going here. We're going to just stamp a couple of these on top here. And because this paper is still wet, it's going to kind of just bleed into there still, but hold that shape somewhat. So if you can see, this side is bleeding a little more than this side, but it's creating a kind of a nice effect. This is going to be a nice little background for behind those white leaves and really make it pop. So that looks pretty good for that version. Let's set that aside to dry. Let's do the same thing here. This is a little more dry. I like to stamp the top image and flip it upside down. So stamp one image, rotate it, flip again to kind of come across. And then let's just fill in those holes in the middle there. And maybe a tiny bit more there. That looks good. So two versions, similar. This bleeds a little more, you can tell, and this one is a little more dry. Now on our example card, we have 3 leaves that have been die cut, put across the front. We're going to set those aside to dry, and we're going to die cut 3 leaves from the intricate leaf dies that go with this stamp set. And we're using this leaf here. And I have, for sake of time, die cut a couple already. So let's pull this out. Now, these leaves sometimes have quite a bit of a negative space that needs to be popped out. You can use a brush to get those out. What I like to do is I like to line all 3 up. This is kind of a little tip for you. And take the time with a paper piercer to punch all of those negative pieces out. That one's stubborn. We're gonna have to cut that one out, and I'll show you how you do that. So I might have wanted to run these leaves through twice because it looks like I kind of have a dull piece on my die. Now, a fun tip for you, you can save all your negative pieces for a shaker card for later. So I used a different color here and have a bunch set aside. I'm going to take an X-Acto knife and I'm going to just trace along where it was die cut before if it didn't pop all the way out. So we'll do that here. Pretty easy. Sometimes that happens. It doesn't mean you have to start over. It just means you come up with a creative way to fix it. Okay, so we've got these 3 leaves here. And we've got these 2 backgrounds. Let's see which one we like. This one? I think I like this one. I like the little bit of extra white on the bottom. So we'll set this aside for another card. Okay. Now we will mount these. These are mounted directly to the card, just using some glue dots. And I'm just tacking a few glue dots down. They don't need a ton of adhesive, so I'm just using the thicker areas behind this leaf to add there. Make sure from the back side that the adhesive is not showing through by just dragging the adhesive this way. That's what I like to do with these intricate ones. You could also use adhesive paper and die cut these on adhesive paper so that the whole thing becomes a sticker. Now, we're going to mount the first one right in the center. If you need help mounting it in the center, T-square is always a great idea. If you have a little T-square, we'll just mount that right on the 2 because this is 4 inches across. And then we'll mount the other 2 equal distance on either side. So I'll take a second and put glue dots on the back of those and get ready to mount those. Okay. And we'll get ready to mount those onto this card. So we'll use about maybe 1/8 of an inch in between, 1/8 to 1/4. We'll mount that one. Looks nice, this strong contrast of these colors. And if you didn't tuck your, if you still have adhesive poking out, use your paper piercing, or you take your pick tool, just tuck that back in so that no adhesive is showing, and just make sure they're pressed down. Very nice. And then this piece is going to mount directly onto the card. Same distance from the two sides and the top. Mount that onto our card, just like so. I have a little bit of goober right there that I'm gonna, okay, mount it like so. Okay, now we are going to come up with our greeting. We are going to use a thank you, stamp it in Versamark on black. This gorgeous leaf stamp set doesn't have a greeting, so you can pull a greeting from any one of your stamp sets that you happen to have. I am going to use the thank you from Little Delights. This is in the Holiday Mini Catalog. This is a cute little set, but I like this chunky thank you. So we're going to use that. So let's take and mount that up. I'm going to take a powder pal. You can use any sort of embossing de-static that you want. Even a static dryer sheet will work. I'm just going to rub this whole piece of paper here before we stamp. I'm going to stamp multiple greetings so that I have options, because sometimes when you're using white embossed powder, it tends to get a little messy. So we're going to ink up using Versamark, and then we're going to stamp 1, 2, 3. I think that'll give us enough options. And I'm not sure if you can see those on there, but now we're going to use some embossing powder. Just pour a little right there down the center. Get all 3 of those ready to go. Perhaps we need a little more. And then we're going to get ready to heat set. I do see that there are some areas that have goobers. You can go in with a little fine tipped paintbrush, pull some of those goobers out so that your embossing is a little more clean. But part of the reason I like this image is that it was chunky, and so little bits of embossing powder that hang around, they're okay. Okay, we have a good choice there. And now let's heat set it. I like doing multiples because then you can choose which one you like the best. Also, you have extras for later cards. So we're going to trim this out on the card. That greeting is 3/8 of an inch wide by roughly 3 1/4 long. Just like so. I've trimmed mine longer, and I'm going to use a punch to flag each of those edges. Take this punch in, flag one side. I need to go a little bit more. That's how I measure. Doesn't have to be exact. Line that up to the center, pop that out. Looks very good, pretty close to the original. And now we're going to mount that to this card, and we're going to use Stampin' Dimensionals. eyeball center it. And tack it down. And just like that, you have a card that looks pretty complicated, but was really quite simple. On my blog, you will see written instructions on how to create this card. Kind of a similar technique in the back. Some of these, this is more dry stamped, but some of the images blended in a little bit there. Used a couple of the other leaves. Same technique here. This one I didn't clean up at all because I liked that splattery effect of the greeting. So there you have it. Two very different cards using the Gorgeous Leaves stamp set and die bundle. Thanks for watching this month. I hope you learned something. Talk to you soon.